Welcome back to Trailcraft. I'm Wyatt. What we're going to take a look at today is what to do when you're out on the trail and you break a synthetic winch line or a synthetic winch line extension or any of the stuff that you might be using out there, whatever it might be, because it happens. So we're going to look at what happens when these break, and then we're going to look at a few kind of trailside ways to fix these. For our purposes here, and for your purposes out in the world, what we're working with is dyneema. So what's going to happen when this dyneema line breaks? We'll show you. What's going to happen when you're out there in the world and, you know, an Amazon synthetic winch cable breaks? Who knows? So just so we're on the same page, what we've got rigged up here, this is an old winch line that we've retired and we're going to be sacrificing to the winch line gods here this afternoon. It's going out to a tree strap, normal 4-ton shackle, rated shackle, everybody's happy out there. This is connected straight to the back of the truck. We can talk about how that's done later. The front of the truck, winch, 10,000 pound super winch headed out to a tree strap, out to that big yellow birch out there. And what we're going to do is winch in. If you come up here and take a look, one of the reasons why this winch line was retired, not to mention the fact that it's very frayed in general, but stuff like this right here, as soon as your winch cable, synthetic winch line or anything you might be doing, starts to have these big chunks taken out of it, that is, you know, let's say most likely where this is going to fail. If it doesn't, I got a pair of loppers, I got a knife. This thing's going to break here today, so that'll be good entertainment. But let's get some load on it first and see what happens. All right, so about what we expected there probably. You know, it failed right at that weak link, and you could see there was a good bit of recoil, you know, right at that midpoint, and the rope shot off both ways, and you can see the one half of it's right at the truck there, and the other half is all the way up there at the tree strap. So anyone who's out there that's kind of the theory that dyneema or synthetic rope in general just falls flat to the ground, not necessarily the case. But does it have that much kinetic energy? Not really, because it just doesn't have the weight. So, you know, if that did potentially hit somebody in the shin, was it going to actually injure them? Most likely not. Of course, it could hit someone in the face and get somebody in the eyes or, you know, some other sensitive area potentially. But here we are. We've got a broken synthetic line. Let's look at a few different ways that you could connect this back together. And, you know, hey, if you were winching and your line broke, how are you going to get back moving again? And let's take a quick look at that. So say this was your winch cable, and now that's broken and this is what you've got left going back to your winch. You can essentially disregard this other piece for right now, and what you're trying to do is connect, you know, your winch to hopefully an object, whatever it might be, to continue pulling yourself out of the situation you were in. Most people know that dyneema, you can't tie many conventional knots. There are fancy knots that you can use if you want to learn some exotic knots, or if you're a sailor and you've got a huge arsenal of knots in your library, great. But especially with brand new dyneema, this stuff is so slippery that if you try any kind of conventional sort of normal knot, it's just going to slip out and come undone. Luckily, the one knot that does work really well with dyneema is just a basic figure 8. So any of you rock climbers out there, anybody who's done any rappelling or anything else, a figure 8 is a super easy knot to accomplish, and really simply, you just come over your hand, you make a bite, come over your hand, around, down, and then back through on itself, making, you can see the figure 8 right there, and that is not going to slip in dyneema. That's a little ugly, there we go. You can tighten that up, and that is going to be your best bet. And you can attach that with a shackle, and you will be able to use, again, straight to that tree strap, straight to another vehicle, whatever it might be, and that's not going to pull out. How strong is this? They say, and it's been tested to about half the strength now of this winch line. So if this is, you know, an 18,000 pound braking strength, let's see. This is normal 3/8. 3/8 dyneema, braking strength 17,600 pounds. So if it's as close as matters to 17,000 pounds braking strength, now it's as close as matters to 8,500 pounds braking strength. Is that enough to tow your 4,000 pound vehicle out? Most likely, unless you're very, very bogged or also on a very steep hill or something like that. This will most likely pull you out. So that simple figure 8 is the easiest way to get moving again. If you're in a hurry for some reason, tie that figure 8 off, get it connected back up, get the system running again, winch in, and you'll be good to go. There are other options, and the other option is to do a really quick splice. Essentially, if you've never worked with dyneema, again, it's a 12 strand, basically a tube. So there's nothing inside of here. It's just these 12 strands and it's hollow on the inside. This new piece might actually be easier to show you when it's nice and brand new. You can really tell there's nobody home in there, right? It's just those 12 strands. That's all we're working with. So when you look at, how this cable was spliced on here, well, it's essentially just run back to the inside of itself, right? So it's run through here and then back in to the inside, and it's just that tension that's in there that's holding this in. So that's what's called a straight bury splice, where this is just buried straight down through into the tube of the rest of the dyneema. And you can feel it whenever you get a piece of dyneema. You'll see it's very, very thick near the connection, and then it tapers down, and then at some point you've got just that one section. So you can see how that's much fatter, this is much thinner. That's because this has been fed back around and inside of the dyneema, and it's just that tension that's holding this together, and it's extremely strong. Often in the sailing world, they'll put a few stitches in here just with some thread or run through it with something else, but really it's just that straight tension that's holding this together. Are you going to be able to do that on the trail side? Probably not. If you now took this broken piece of dyneema and tried to open it up and feed it back through to the inside of itself, I'm not going to say it couldn't be done, but hopefully you've got a lot of time on your hands. The easiest thing to do would be to find a tent stake or something like that, or you can kind of whittle a stick or something and open up this dyneema so that essentially you can make a little tunnel out of it, and then you'd want to kind of feed a stick in there and tie this to that somehow, or tape it and get that back in through on itself and feed it through that sheathing, and you can make a loop like that, but it's going to be very difficult. You're going to be spending some time doing that, potentially hours. An easier, kind of quicker way to do that is to do sort of an adaptation of a Brunel splice, which you'll see on most shackles and things like that. And in order to do that, all you need to do, you could take a stick or again a tent peg or anything you need, but you're going to go right through the dyneema sideways. You'll see this one has a red and a green tracer. That indicates, in this case, this piece of dyneema, what year it was made. This was made in 2013. You can look that up, but green and red's 2013, and then it cycles as you go through different years. But now that you've got essentially a hole through this, boy, I'd love to clean that up and maybe tape that end, but whatever. We're going hot. Just kind of stuff that right through the hole that you made in the side of the dyneema. Looks like that, right? So now what you need to do is just tighten that loop significantly. I'm going to just cut away some of this like red and green stringer because it's going to get in my way and I don't like it. It's not doing anything for us. It's just going to kind of be annoying. So now that we've got it running through once, we're going to tighten that up significantly and then make another hole on this end. And what this hole is going to do is this whole loop is going to go through it. So you need to kind of blow this one out a little bit. You can do it with just a Leatherman, but you need to really stretch this one out significantly because that whole loop has to go through here. So whatever you need to do, you could get a big stick. Let's try this side. Just kind of work it through. You can do that to kind of stretch it out a little bit. But just work with this for a minute and see if you can really blow out a hole there. It's not tearing the fibers, you're not compromising the strength of anything, you're just kind of opening that up a little. We'll speed this part of the video up and make it look like it's really easy and I'm not bleeding a little bit. So now you've got a decent sized hole. The thing you need to do is pass this through one more time all the way. What that's going to do is kind of preload a kink into the line. So you'll see as you pull that through, it's going to kind of add a kink in the line. Right? So now it's kind of spun around on itself. So now you'll see why we preloaded that sort of kink in the system, because now as we feed the first loop we made through this hole and kind of bring it inside out on itself, it's going to take that back out of the system. So now that's going to lay nice and flat. So in essence, what you've got now is that Brumel splice. You know, you've got the rope, which is heading straight through this one, around through itself, and then back through here. What you would want to do here is ideally now straight bury some of this into the original piece of rope. But in our case, if you were in the woods, this is good enough. And what we're gonna do now is just put this under load. So what we've got here is the figure 8 knot on one side that I had tied there originally before we filmed the video, and then our improvised splice on this end. And we're gonna hook it back up and kind of see what happens. Put it under some pretty significant load. Again, we got a 10,000 pound winch. We're not gonna bring it all the way down to that first wrap, but we're gonna get this thing under some pretty good tension and see where we get. So it did get down to that first wrap on the drum here, which is great. It means we'll get a lot of power out of the winch. So again, just looking at kind of the rough system that we've got, tree strap, 4-ton shackle, our improvised splice on one end. This has got just a figure 8 on the other end, another 4-ton shackle to the rear bumper. There are no really noticeable spots where this is going to come undone on its own. So we're gonna expect it to fail, probably at the improvised splice, maybe at the figure 8, most likely not in the center of the line, most likely not the bumper, the tree strap, definitely not a shackle. If you wanted to, you could certainly put a safety over this. Again, if we were worried about the whiplash of that piece of dyneema snapping back or something else, you can go ahead and do that. I mean, that's about it. Yeah, that's the second wrap on the drum, 10,000 pound winch, so that's around about 8,000 pounds choked out. That's really all it's gonna do. You can hear the winch working very, very hard. I'm gonna call that a success. Winching out. So hopefully now you see a couple of really quick, easy ways to repair a synthetic winch line out on the trail. This will work on any of kind of the 12-strand dyneema stuff, Spectra, whatever it might be. It's all going to be about the same. Let's go up and just take a look at the splice. There's nothing to see on kind of the figure 8 end of the world. This is still just under a little bit of load, but nothing we're going to worry about. One thing, you can see this tightened in on itself pretty severely. You know, did it build up some heat in there? Is there some temperature? Probably. You know, is that damaged? Probably. But again, 10,000 pound winch, second wrap on the drum, kind of maxing that winch out, a few strong pulses like that without a failure. We're gonna say that that would probably get you out of the woods, get you out of trouble, might get you home. One other thing to keep in mind, you know, if you're winching from this Jeep, your line broke, and you either do a figure eight or you improvise a splice like that, if you just go ahead and rig that out to this tree strap, if you do have a failure, it's all coming back at you, right? Where if you don't trust it for some reason and you've got enough line or you've got another piece of line or something like that, do a double line pull so that your questionable link that you just made, maybe it's that figure eight knot, is now attached to your own bumper through a snatch block. And that's gonna share the load, which is gonna take a little bit of load off of that knot or your improvised splice or whatever it is. But also, if there is a failure there, the projectile is going away from the vehicle and not towards it. So hopefully that gives you kind of a genuine, realistic idea of what happens when a winch line does fail, and then a couple of quick, easy ways to repair it. In all honesty, on the trail side, the figure eight takes 2 seconds. You can learn that with, you know, a piece of cordage or your shoelaces or whatever, sitting by the coffee table in 2 seconds. It's a very simple knot, and being able to do that figure eight will also, you know, if you're ever attaching a rope to anything, that's a great knot to know. So super easy, super quick. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you've got any questions on this or sort of anything else off-road or recovery related, realistic, please add it in the comment section. We're gonna get to those just as quick as we can. Hopefully, you know, subscribe to the channel. Check out trailcraft.teamoneil.com. We do off-road driving courses. We can do recovery courses and all that kind of stuff. We're up here in New Hampshire, but we travel all over as well. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe, have fun, and we'll catch you next time.